Questions pouring in this weekend, and I haven't been able to answer all of them. Please forgive me for that. I just got a question from a gentleman a few hours ago, actually, about a VSS sensor on his Lexus 300 something or other. To that user, it more than likely could be. If your speedometer stays at 0 and your transmission isn't shifting, well then, yeah, your VSS sensor is to blame. Now I want to discuss a little bit about the vehicle speed sensor itself, and what it does. This little device here. A lot of people may think that there's supposed to be power to this. Not so. This little device generates power. It generates electric current in small form and small frequencies at low speeds. Once you speed up, then the frequency obviously increases, right? And then that signal is sent to the PCM, powertrain control module, and that's how you get your reading on your speedometer. That's the way it sends a signal to the transmission in order for it to shift gears at proper timing, and that's basically what it does. What we got here is a vehicle speed sensor out of this particular vehicle, my Cadillac DeVille. Now, what happens is this sits on top of the transmission, and inside the transmission is your speedometer drive gear. As you're driving, the speedometer drive gear turns. This is magnetic. Okay? So every time your speedometer drive gear turns, it is sending small current to the powertrain control module. This is how you get your vehicle speed, and also tells the computer when to shift the transmission, whether to shift to second or third, or overdrive or whatever, right? Very straightforward. This here is the pigtail that plugs into it, and this wire goes to the powertrain control module. You tell me the problem with this wire. There's supposed to be 2 of them there. What I want you to do to the specific user that sent me the question, remember, if you drive your car in the winter, this sensor is located right behind the passenger side tire. Okay? This wire is rotten. After thorough examination of this wire harness, I examined it and determined that the wire was in fact rotten. Therefore, it wasn't getting signal to the PCM. That's why my speedometer was cutting in and out for a few miles. My transmission was shifting all funky, and apparently it came to the point where the car was no longer drivable. So, this vehicle speed sensor, there is nothing wrong with it. There is a new one in the car, and it's staying there. But, if I were you, don't go ahead and tear out the powertrain control module. Okay? Chances are there is no bad wiring there. But, take a look at the pigtail. This wire is exposed to salt, sand. If you drive down gravel roads, okay, it's exposed to a lot of nonsense. If you oil your vehicle, it's probably covered in nothing but crap. So thoroughly inspect the wire first. If the wire isn't working, well, if the wire is fine, take your sensor and jumper wire it to your PCM and run a screwdriver underneath it, right across it. If the sensor is fine, you have your key on, you will notice that your speedometer will do something. Okay? I tried this attempt after I jumper wired it, and I ran it to the PCM and ran a screwdriver underneath it. The speedometer went up to 30 miles an hour. So this sensor is in fact perfectly fine. If you do this test and it doesn't work, then your vehicle speed sensor is to blame. Now when you go out and buy a new sensor and you have determined that it is the sensor at fault, just make sure that it is the sensor, because apparently these parts are not returnable. I don't know why. I know in my area when I ordered this, I cannot return it. So if for whatever reason it turns out that it is a bad wire and you bought yourself a $70 vehicle speed sensor, you won't be able to take it back. You might be able to if you're lucky. I wasn't so lucky. I had to keep it, which is fine anyway, because this sensor has been in the car since the 94, since the day it was manufactured. So it's better off if it's replaced. So I hope that shed some light on the subject when it comes to vehicle speed sensors and their role in today's automobiles. Um, Everything today is mostly electronic, so when it comes to speedometer and transmission shift problems, yes, it could be linked to a vehicle speed sensor. All you have to remember is a vehicle speed sensor has two wires. Normally with General Motors vehicles, it's a yellow one and a purple one. Um, when the wire went on my car, once it rotted off, there was still a wire left there, which is a ground wire. And with that wire still there, it did not send a trouble code to the computer. So the transmission would just stay in first gear. Now, if you happen to have trouble on the road with your vehicle speed sensor, all of a sudden your transmission stays at zero, or your transmission doesn't shift rather, and your speedometer stays at zero, and it's not sending a trouble code, P024, what you can do is unplug the wire from the vehicle speed sensor, and what will happen is immediately it will send a trouble code to the computer saying that, uh-oh, we got a problem here. There's no signal coming from the VSS sensor to the powertrain control module. And what it'll do is go into a closed loop where it'll actually keep the transmission in third gear constantly. So at least you would be able to limp home. Now, usually you won't have a problem like that. Usually when the sensors do go, it'll give you plenty of warning. You'll end up having the speedometer shifting erratically all over the place. Your transmission will shift erratically as well, but you usually get a warning. It's not going to just up and quit. Mine gave me some warning. Eventually it up and quit. The speedometer stayed at zero, transmission wouldn't shift. So all you have to do is remember to start off with your wire harness first. Check and examine thoroughly the wire at the VSS sensor. Don't go and start ripping and tearing everything out just yet. And once you confirm that it's just a wiring job, go ahead and cut the old wire out, put a new one in. Very straightforward. You'll be back on the road again. So I hope that shed a little bit of light on vehicle speed sensors for all of you guys. There's been emails and emails and emails just pouring in about this subject. I got a comment about 3 hours ago from a YouTube user, 3D Drain, something or other, Drain 3 or something. Anyway, sorry if I forget your name. But yes, there's been tons of emails pouring in about this. I didn't expect there to be that many, so I thought I'd try and shed a little bit of light on the subject. If you do have problems with your speedometer and your transmission isn't shifting, more than likely it is just a wiring job. I did have to rip out the powertrain control module out of my vehicle in order to run the test with my old VSS sensor. All you have to remember is for GM models, it's a yellow and purple wire, and I jumper wired it right to the PCM, sat in the car, and ran a screwdriver underneath the VSS sensor. And if the VSS sensor is good, you're going to notice that your speedometer is going to do something. Like I say, my speedometer went up to 30 miles an hour as soon as I ran the screwdriver underneath the VSS sensor. So just keep that in mind. If the sensor doesn't do anything, and your speedometer doesn't do anything, more than likely it is your VSS sensor. Remember, this sensor generates current. There is no current going to it. It's got to send current to the PCM. So just keep that in mind. So anyway, you guys have yourself a nice evening. We'll catch you right back here next weekend.